Despite the fact that this channel is 99% books and 1% travel, I like to set aside one video a year to talk about my favourite albums of the year. Because music is as big a part of my life as literature is. I spend a lot of time every single week searching for new music. I listen to several new albums every single week. I'm obsessed with finding great new music. And I want to talk about it. So here are my top 20 albums of 2023. In case you want a heads up about my music taste before I jump in, I am predominantly a metalhead. I listen to a lot of various genres of metal, a lot of punk, a lot of prog rock, and this list has all of that plus a few other things as well. If you don't like metal, punk and prog, but you know someone who does, send them this video and see what they think. Let's crack on. At number 20 is Superbloom by Silent Planet. When I was at university, the genre of metalcore was everywhere. And to an extent it still is, but it did die for a little while, and Silent Planet kind of represented a resurgence of metalcore. I've enjoyed their albums over the past few years, but Superbloom has hit me just right. It's a technical metalcore album full of lots and lots of electronica. It blends a little bit of synthwave in there, and it feels very science fiction, very cyberpunk soundtrack. I enjoy it a lot. It's not the best thing you're going to hear this year, but if you enjoy clever blends of electronica and metalcore music that create something that sounds like it could be a sci-fi anime soundtrack, you'll enjoy this one. And number 19 is Decapitation by the Zenith Passage. I never would have heard of this at all, like not even the band at all, if it weren't for Alex Rudinger, who is a YouTube drummer who I meticulously watch. I've seen him play live with a band he used to be in. He's been in a lot of different bands and recorded a lot of different albums for them. He's kind of a session drummer. He's always in a band for a little while, just enough to record an album, maybe do a tour, and then he leaves. He was in Whitechapel for a little while, and he's just recorded the drums for this album with the Zenith Passage, and the album slaps. It's awesome. It's a really intense bit of technical death metal with a real emphasis on the technical. Once again, this has a kind of sci-fi feel to it. It's very metallic sounding, very electronic, and again, like the previous album, there are electronic elements in here. Bits of synth are woven in here and there, but this is also a very raw and aggressive album that I really enjoyed. I will always listen to Alex Rudinger's drums. He is one of the best drummers on YouTube. I love everything he does, and the more of his style you listen to, the more you can tell when he appears on a band's album. He brings something unique to it, and I'm really glad I got to listen to a new album that he drummed on. He's great. At number 18 is Almost Human by Wormhole, who are described as a tech slam metal band. And in all my years of being a metalhead, I've never heard of slam metal. So I did a bit of digging, and it turns out it's just death metal that sounds really raw and unpolished. That's it. So these guys are technical death metal, but sounding a bit shit at the same time. Which I actually disagree with. They're really polished, they're amazing musicians. They are going hard with this music. It is really intense. The deep, growling vocals are entirely unintelligible. It is just noise, and I love it. They're also having a lot of fun with what they do. They put in weird sound bites into their music. In this album and their previous one, there are sound bites from SpongeBob SquarePants that they have altered in funny ways. And in this one, there is a lull moment where a sexy female voice comes in and just says the phrase tech slam out of nowhere, and it gets stuck in my head. It's brilliant. These guys are having fun. They're amazing technical death metal musicians, and I have listened to this album over and over again because it's like 25 minutes long. That's it. I just put it on repeat sometimes. It is intense, it is raw, and I love it. At number 16 is Godlike by Thy Art Is Murder. This band has a very special place in my heart. They have been my favourite deathcore band for 10 years now, since their second album, Hate, came out back when I was a high school teacher. And I remember talking to one of my students about them. They're from Sydney, Australia. They're an amazing band, but they made headlines this year because the week that this album dropped, they actually fired their longtime vocalist, re-recorded the vocals on the album with a new vocalist, and went on tour with that new vocalist, and it created a massive scandal. The reason CJ was fired from the band apparently was because he had become very right-wing, unhinged, conspiracy theorist, blah blah blah, And the final nail in the coffin was this anti-trans diatribe. And the rest of the band wanted to make it clear that they stand up for trans rights, that they're not falling into this crazy right-wing rabbit hole, and so they fired CJ. At least that's what I understand. As a trans person who loves the band, I was thrilled by this. I love CJ's vocals, and I always thought he was a decent guy, but oh well. If he is a bad guy, good riddance. They brought out a great album, I get to listen to them. They were playing Glasgow recently and I didn't get to see them, I was annoyed about that, but this album's amazing. It's another great album from Thy Art Is Murder, a band that have stood up for trans rights and fired a member over it. Awesome. Go woke and stay cool. I definitely miscounted. I'm sure I just said that that was number 16 and it was actually 17, and the real number 16 is Final Pitch by Arch Echo. These guys are an absolute delight. They are a very happy, bouncy, positive, instrumental math rock band. I love what they do. I think this is their third album. I've enjoyed everything they've ever put out. Their music is a happy instrumental dreamscape full of really technical guitars and drums. They're one of those math rock bands that are really fun and joyous to listen to because all of their music creates really good chill vibes and happy vibes, but it's also just very technically impressive music. If you're one of those people who can't listen to music while you read a book, try this. See what kind of a mood it puts you in. As I said, it's all instrumental, except for one track that features Anthony Vincent, who's a really successful YouTube singer-songwriter. That song is catchy as hell. Go check out this band if you like math rock, if you like instrumental music, and in amongst all of this dark death metal stuff I'm talking about, we've got something really happy and chill. Number 15 is On Thorns I Lay by On Thorns I Lay. I don't have a lot to say about this one. This is a death doom band, and doom metal is something that I've never quite gotten to understand or get to grips with, but when you blend it with death metal, it just works and creates a kind of moody, dreamy, slow, potentially scary soundscape where death metal just gets to slow down, often blend itself with elements of classical orchestration to create something really doomy and morose and inarguably beautiful. I really enjoy listening to this album when reading certain books. It's very good as a soundtrack. I remember listening to it while reading The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff, and it absolutely carried that book for me. It blended perfectly. It was really, really good. So if you like the idea of death metal, slowed down, more doomy, a bit orchestral, this stuff's gorgeous. Number 14 is The Sin of Human Frailty by End. End is a very, very aggressive hardcore band. And they're actually a super band. They are made up of members of various bands that I am also a massive fan of. Various bands in the hardcore and metalcore genres. End brought out an album, I think in 2020. I'm sure I was in lockdown when I listened to that album. And now they have a new one, The Sin of Human Frailty. And once again, this is a very short, bombastic, heavy, aggressive piece of hardcore. It doesn't relent, it doesn't let up. The mixing and mastering is gorgeous. I don't know what studio they recorded at or who they used as their engineer, but it sounds so crisp and intense and frightening. It really just sounds like the end of the world. This is one of the most aggressive, terrifying, powerful, and angry albums you will hear this year, or any year. End absolutely bring it. They do not hold back on the relentless terror and aggression. And it's awesome. Number 13 is Black Braid 2 by Black Braid. Black Braid's second album. Black Braid, as far as I understand it, is a one-man black metal project. I love black metal, and it's amazing how much black metal is made by one guy. So often, a black metal project is just one multi-instrumentalist. And I'm pretty sure that's what we've got here. But what makes Black Braid unique is that this multi-instrumentalist one-man project is a Native American guy who blends Native American instrumentation and musicianship into his music. This is a kind of post-rock black metal thing that incorporates various flutes and other Native American instruments to create something that sounds very, very unique. His music is reminiscent of other big black metal slash shoegaze slash post-rock projects like Deaf Heaven and Panopticon, but it sounds very unique because he's Native American and he's bringing his culture into this, and I think that's so fucking cool. It really makes Black Braid sound like nothing else, even within a genre that's getting kind of packed. Such a cool album. At number 12 is Rejecting Obliteration by Blindfolded and Led into the Woods, is a sentence I really just said. I love bands like this. They're usually death metal bands, and this is a death metal band. Bands that create ridiculous names for both themselves and their records and their tracks. It's fun, it's ridiculous. Sometimes you can tell they're not taking themselves seriously, and sometimes you're not sure. With this one, I'm not sure. I really don't know if this is a serious name for the band and the album. Whatever the case, I'm enjoying it, and this is a really, really powerful piece of technical death metal. I'm a huge death metal fan, as I've talked about a lot, and I particularly do enjoy technical death metal, although technical death metal, which is basically death metal with really tough elements and a little bit of prog thrown in, it can be very hit and miss because it can sound very pretentious and it does get kind of samey. It's ironic how something that is supposed to be all about experimentation and originality can actually come across as kind of bland sometimes, and this band is the entire opposite of that. This record is punishing, it is brutal, it sounds incredibly heavy and satisfying, there is a gravity and a weight to every track, the vocals sound crisp, and very varied as well. The vocalist has this ability to do this kind of hardcore shouting mixed with death metal growling, and it's gorgeous stuff. Really, really brutal, pounding, terrifying, brilliant stuff. I've listened to this album so many times and it really took me by surprise. I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did, but it is absolutely my favourite technical death metal album of this year. Number 11 is The Fox and the Bird by OK Good Night. This is a progressive rock band from, I think, Boston, Massachusetts, made up of a group of kids. Or at least what I think of as kids these days, because I'm in my 30s now. As far as I understand it, the vocalist for this band writes and records a lot of the music for that web series Ruby, anime-style web series thing that H-Bomber Guy once did a video about. I've never seen it and I've never cared to, but I think she's like their lead composer and she's like 22 years old. Anyway, she's the vocalist for this band and they are a really chill and positive, folksy prog rock band. There are a few acoustic tracks in here, blended with things a little bit heavier. It's all clean vocals and it's stunning. It's really beautiful. The album art is gorgeous. It has cozy vibes while also being, as I said, prog rock. It does a lot of things and it does it all really, really well. This is a very varied album with a quiet intro, a much louder and more bombastic second track, followed by two very acoustic tracks. And then it gets heavier again from there. A really nice blend. A well-written, well-constructed piece of folksy prog rock, and I have loved spinning this album over and over again this year. Okay, now we're into my top 10. And at number 10 is A Kiss for the Whole World by one of my favourite bands of all time, Enter Shikari. Enter Shikari are a band that are tough to pin down genre-wise. They blend punk, hardcore and metal with a lot of various electronic influences. They're a band kind of defined by their aggressive political lyrics. Their music is often about things like climate change, corrupt party politicians, healthcare, human rights, etc. And I love when bands discuss these things. It hits me really hard, and it means that even music that's very angry, aggressive, bombastic can actually make me cry while I'm thinking about the lyrics. Enter Shikari are great. I've enjoyed them since their very first single. I've been into them since I was in 6th form and I'm 33 now. I have never not loved everything that Enter Shikari do, and I enjoy how they continue to evolve. This album sounds fresh. Every album of theirs sounds fresh. I'm always intrigued by how they're going to just slightly tweak and evolve their sound, and they always manage to. This album kind of feels like a greatest hits of all of their different elements. But then that's not really true, because every album feels like that. They're always building on themselves in a really fun way. The only disappointing thing about this album is that last year they brought out 2 or 3 singles, which were all just individual separate entities that didn't make it onto this record, and all of those singles were better than what's on this record. They all feature other musicians, and they all absolutely slap harder than anything on A Kiss for the Whole World. Which is kind of annoying, and yet this album still made it to my number 10 because I love this band and everything they ever do. They nailed it yet again. This one is an absolute banger. Just a series of absolute bangers. Number 9 is The Record by Boy Genius. I am an enormous Phoebe Bridgers band, as is every human being on this planet, and Boy Genius is a supergroup made up of her, Lucy Dacus, and Julian Baker. And together, these three women have created an amazing pop rock record for the ages. This thing is enormous. It is varied, it is beautiful, and several tracks on here have almost brought me to tears. I love this album so much. I can't listen to it while I'm reading because I focus too much on the lyrics, and so I enjoy spinning this while I go for a walk or I'm just doing the washing up or some household chores. The record is absolutely stunning. I've watched them live on YouTube, not actually in person, although I'd love to. But these three are all amazing. And other than Phoebe Bridgers, I hadn't heard of the other two before. So now I have two amazing singer-songwriters to check out. I particularly enjoy what Lucy Dacus is doing. She's fantastic. The record's amazing. If you haven't listened to Boy Genius yet, I mean, I'm sure you have, they're enormous, but this record is so great. And number 8 is Divine Inattention by Hail the Sun, a band that I've been into for quite a few years, and I only just found out that their drummer is their vocalist. I don't know how I didn't know that, but he's awesome. He writes the music, he sings it, he plays the drums, he's great. This band is kind of technical post-hardcore. There is a lot of feeling here. This is screaming and shouting about emotions and feelings. There's a real emo-ness to this album that I love. I'm a huge emo fan. My Chemical Romance will always be one of my favourite bands. And these guys have a slightly more math rock-inspired post-hardcore sound to them. They kind of remind me of one of my other favourite bands, Every Time I Die, rest in peace. And this is maybe their best album yet. I really enjoy Hail the Sun. If you enjoy emo music, if you enjoy post-hardcore music, and you have never listened to Hail the Sun, check them out. This is a fantastic album, just full of raw tension, emotion, anxiety, and depression. It's intense and fun. I don't know why I'm calling it fun. There's just this cathartic release about it that I love. At number 7 is 93696 by Liturgy. Liturgy is an avant-garde experimental black metal band from New York. They are led by a very philosophically minded trans woman who writes really weird experimental avant-garde black metal music. It's weird stuff. She makes YouTube videos about philosophy and God and what God is and what God represents, and it's stuff that I can't wrap my head around, but her music's awesome. You never know what you're gonna get with the next track. It might be a 12-minute long scream fest of black metal intensity, or it might be 1 minute of a choir singing angelic harmonies. It's odd. It's brilliant, and the more you listen to it, the more you start thinking this is some kind of wild masterpiece of strange avant-garde weirdness. Liturgy are awesome. I hadn't even heard of them until this year, and I find that really weird because I am a massive black metal fan, and their vocalist is a trans woman. Where have I been? What have I been doing? Should have been listening to Liturgy. Number 6 is The Weight of the Mask by Svalbard, a kind of hardcore slash metalcore band from Bristol whom I saw multiple times live back when I lived in Bristol. This is a band of intensity whose lyrics and vocal delivery have a real sense of desperation to them. Their lyrics are often about politics or about mental health. There's a lyric in this album that gets repeated again and again, where the lead vocalist says that she is too depressed to tell you how depressed she is. And wow, that hits hard. She's awesome, she's really cool, the whole band are amazing, and there is just so much raw intensity here. This is a pretty dark and depressing album full of just screams of anguish and some really gorgeous technical musicianship. Svalbard are amazing. They are hard to pin down into a specific genre. I guess I'd just kind of call them hardcore. But if you're feeling down, this is an album that will empathize with you, although brace yourself because it is a lot. Number 5 is Air Not Meant for Us by Fires in the Distance, another amazing death doom band who kind of came out of nowhere. This is their second album and they exploded in the metal scene this year. People have been going crazy over this record, and rightly so. This is technical death metal mixed with a lot of beautiful doomness. There's so much orchestration here. This is a big and bombastic and beautiful thing. Really technically impressive, gorgeously mixed, brilliant death metal with so much orchestral instrumentation blended in, and it all folds in together just majestically. This is an album like nothing else. Honestly, one of the most impressive things I've heard this year. If you love death metal and you love when death metal incorporates orchestral instrumentation, you're going to love this. You're going to eat it up and listen to it again and again and again. Fires in the Distance are amazing. Their vocalist is something else. Everything about this band. There's no weak link, there's no weak point, nothing sounds wrong or nothing's dragging them down. The mixing and mastering, literally everything about this album is death doom metal perfection. I have to be careful here because I could talk about this album all day. Number 4 is Some of It Was True by the Menzingers, a punk rock band from Philadelphia that I've been following for at least 10 years. I love the Menzingers. Every single time they bring out a new album, I know that it's going to be in my top 10, and this one hit number 4. The Menzingers don't miss. They are great. Their music is constantly existentialist. They're always thinking about the fact that they're getting older, missing opportunities, missing their youth, feeling nostalgic. They are constantly having massive existential crises. These poor guys. Their music is about love and loss and all kinds of things. They are a punk band at heart, but they also blend in a lot of Americana. One of the tracks on this album sounds very Tom Petty. They're chill when they need to be, and they go hard when they want to. They're a band that does what they want, and I think they are wonderful. One of my old favourite bands, the Gaslight Anthem, brought out a shit new album this year. This was their big return, and it was rubbish. And if you were also disappointed by how terrible the new Gaslight Anthem album was, go check out the Menzingers, because they will fill that void for you. Number 3 is As in Gardens, So in Tombs by Andoce, a technical black metal band from Finland who have been around for, I think, longer than I've been alive. And they've had various iterations. They've changed their name, and when they change their name, they change their style entirely and then change it back again. And this is their second album after returning to the Andoce's name after like 20 years of being other bands. They're very strange. They are proper Finnish black metal, but the technical mastery here is like nothing I've ever heard. Their drummer is one of the great metal drummers. Just go on YouTube, type in Andoce, and check out their drummer. As a drummer myself, I can't imagine even trying to cover a single section of a single song he's ever recorded. The drums on this album make me drool, make me scream, make my head want to explode. There is speed and intensity and technical wizardry here. This guy is almost on par with Thomas Harker from Meshuggah. It's insane to me what he manages to do here, especially for black metal, which always has pretty bland drumming, just blast beats, blast beats, blast beats forever for 10 minutes until your wrist dies and then the next track starts and that's it. This is something else entirely. That's why I'm calling it technical black metal, which I don't think is even a genre, but I have to use that term. Andoceans are amazing. These guys are old now, and their vocals, their guitars, everything sounds crisp and clean and beautiful and youthful and vibrant. It is intense and one of the best black metal bands and albums I have ever heard in my entire life. I love this band, I love this record, black metal masterpiece, absolute perfection. Number 2 is Terracite by Cattle Decapitation, a death metal band from San Diego who've been around for a long time, and I think Terracite is their best album yet. The kind of, I think they're called goblin vocals that their vocalist is able to employ in certain tracks are insane and weird. They're kind of his version of clean vocals, and I absolutely love them. I'm sure they're called goblin vocals, something like that. He's great, he's amazing, and this is easily the best thing they've ever put out. Cattle Decapitation are a death metal band that used to be all about being vegetarian. That's their whole thing, that's their theme. They're all vegetarians and they write a lot of music about the meat industry, hence their name. Terracite goes bigger than that. This is about the human virus and what we're doing to the planet, global warming, etc. Which I think their last album, Death Atlas, was also about. I don't know, I didn't look into the lyrics of that one as much, but this one, well, I've been spinning this endlessly since it came out in April or May, I think. Terracite is an absolute masterpiece of death metal. They are one of the best death metal bands in the world, and they weren't always death metal either. But they've refined their sound again and again. It took them like a decade to find what they were trying to accomplish with their music, I think. And that was like in the 90s, and since then they have just honed and honed and honed their skills, and Terracite feels like the peak of their power, the peak of their skill. perfection in death metal. Now, my number one album is not a surprise to me, but I keep my musical interests to myself because none of my friends care about what I listen to, none of my friends are metalheads. So I can't exactly say that everyone knew this was coming. I knew it was coming because I keep my music to myself. But yeah, this was very obvious to me. My number one album of 2023 is Fauna by Haken. Haken have been my favourite band for many, many, many years. They are a progressive rock band from London. I've seen them live, I love them to pieces, I love everything they ever do. I follow all the members on social media. This is my band. Haken are everything to me, and I think Fauna might be their best album yet, which is a massive accomplishment. There's a track on this album called The Alphabet of Me, which I would now call my second favourite Haken track after the track 1985 off the album Affinity. 1985 might be my favourite song of all time, and The Alphabet of Me I think is now their second best song, and overall Fauna is their best album. They have pushed themselves to the limit with this one. In my mind, Haken are the greatest progressive rock band of all time, and I love prog rock. I'm a big fan of Rush and Yes, Dream Theater and all the other prog rock bands out there, and Haken are the best of them. Haken are the number one prog rock band ever. Come at me, prog fans. I don't know any prog fans, I don't know what they're like. Like I said, I keep my music to myself, but Haken are perfect in every single way. They implement so many elements of so many different genres of music, as prog rock always does. There's elements of metal here, there's loads and loads of electronica and synths in here, and it is very, very technically progressive and impressive and perfect, and Haken are everything to me and I love them to pieces, and Fauna is their best album. Congratulations to my favourite band for releasing their best album yet. I love Haken so much. I could talk about them forever. Go listen to Fauna and subscribe for books and music once a year.